Let me bring in the guests who are joining us live. Prabhu Dayal is a former diplomat. We also have Rajiv Bhatia, former ambassador. I'm beginning with you, Prabhu Dayal. There's a lot of anticipation as to what will be decided. And even as I speak to you, details have just come in of World Bank lauding India's progress, particularly to do with digital public infrastructure. Do you think that is going to be a big takeaway when India gives that template to the world and that becomes part of the official document?
Good morning, Maria. I would also like to say good morning to my senior, Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia. You're absolutely right. There would be a lot of emphasis on the aspects of digitalization. And discussions at the G20, as also during the bilaterals, will certainly focus on this very important aspect. Now, India has been showing the way to the world in this regard, and there is a lot of admiration for the success which India has been achieving. India has been sharing its know-how and its expertise in these areas bilaterally as well as in multilateral settings. So, to put it in a nutshell, yes, this aspect will be very important during the discussions.
Yes, and Prabhu Dayal, when I spoke to a Special Secretary of G20 Secretariat, Mr. Pardesi, he said that there will be a special digital experience of UPI which will be set up perhaps inside Bharat Mandapam, the venue, so that the VVIPs can experience what has been a massive success of India's digital technology. Dr. Bhatia, I appreciate your time. Today is the day of arrival. It's also the day of 3 bilaterals that will be held at 7 LKM, that is the Prime Minister's official residence. Dr. Bhatia, among the 3 bilaterals, would you be paying the interest, and the emphasis certainly is with President Joe Biden?
Yes, indeed. I think this is the beauty and the value of a multilateral body like G20. What happens inside the main conference room in terms of focusing on G20 agenda is one thing. On the other side is a host of bilateral meetings that will take place between today and Sunday. And I think it's very important, and I think it's very wise of your channel to focus on both the planks in a very comprehensive manner. So just staying onto the bilateral track for a minute, I think as we know, Prime Minister Modi is expected to hold as many as 16 bilaterals, and perhaps the number will go up as the rest of the week unfolds. That shows that the attempt will be possibly to meet all the more important heads of delegations bilaterally. And the day starting with Mauritius, Bangladesh, the US, and possibly in some form Nigeria. As you know, Nigerian president became the first one to arrive in Delhi on a 6-day tour. Bangladesh is a very welcome visitor, being the next door neighbor and a country with whom India has developed very close relations. I think that will be a very easy and rich meeting going over the usual political economic issues. I think Bangladesh seems to be quite exercised these days about the kind of political pressure they are receiving from the US, and probably that issue can figure into the bilateral meeting. Mauritius will be yet another very easy and friendly meeting. It's a very close, friendly neighbor, and it's a neighbor from Africa. So if we call G20 this year as G20 with Indian characteristics, we also can say that it is G20 with a special focus on Africa and the global south.
That's right.
So I think we are starting off very well today.
Yes, so we are starting off very well today, and there'll be a lot of build-up. And we have seen perhaps this build-ups begin in a month of January, Prabhu Dayal. Would you say that, when India hosted that very important summit in which 125 countries participated, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi emphasized on India being the voice of the global south? that perhaps will take a new form and a new shape when the African Union actually joins the G20?
Maria, you're absolutely right. India has been imparting momentum to its presidency of the G20 over the course of several months. India has taken several initiatives to underline how the interests of the global South need to be attended to on priority. And both in terms of its pronouncements and in terms of the scheduling of meetings, India has emphasized the agenda items which need to be stressed and which need to be taken up seriously so that the needs of the global South can be addressed. And in the bilateral meeting also, which Prime Minister would be having with other leaders, I'm sure that this topic will figure very prominently. I may also mention that I am attaching a lot of importance to the meeting which will be taking place between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, because it will focus on several follow-ups to decisions and agreements which were finalized during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US in June. So it has to be stressed that Prime Minister is building global consensus on how the needs of the global South in particular and the needs of the entire global community at large need to be taken up. And there has to be the need to identify different specific areas where steps have to be taken, such as the solar reliance, such as biofuels, and various other aspects which will help us not only in shaping a better future for ourselves, but also for all other countries. And in this context, the inclusion of the African Union, or the likely inclusion into the G20 and making it the G21 is important. The meetings which Prime Minister will be having, for instance, with Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the President of UAE, are very important because we all know that India and the UAE have a very close relationship, and the two countries have even started a local currency trade in oil and gold.
That's right.
So there is a wide variety of steps which India has been taking and which India will emphasize during its presidency of the G20 Summit.